Recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Louie Gohmert, for 30 minutes. The floor is yours, sir.
Was that 30 minutes or an hour?
30 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So much going on these days, and I would just like to take up a very important issue that's going on right now. There was an interview by our president that was discussed in the LA Times by an article by Christy Parsons and Michael Mamoli, and I saw part of the interview on television. The headline of this story is, Obama raises possibility of allowing UN vote on Palestinian statehood. Their subheadline says, Obama makes a veiled threat about Palestinian statehood in an interview. The article says President Obama took a step toward a tougher line with Israel in an interview released Tuesday, raising the possibility that the U.S. will allow a UN vote on issues related to the Palestinians if the two sides make no meaningful movement toward peace. In an interview with Israeli television station, Obama noted that his administration has, quote, up until this point, unquote, quashed such efforts at the UN while insisting that the Israelis and Palestinians must negotiate a resolution. But he said it is a challenge for the U.S. to keep demanding that the Palestinians negotiate in good faith if no one believes the Israelis are doing the same. Further down it said Obama's critical tone toward Netanyahu, describing him as someone who is, quote, predisposed, unquote, to, quote, think perhaps that peace is naive, unquote, appeared to return to the tough language that marked administration statements earlier this spring around the time of the Israeli election. More recently, the White House had seemed to be trying to mend fences. Well, obviously, that's not the case now. So I thought it might be important, Mr. Speaker, to take a look at some of the comments that have been made by folks who leaders, and we know them to be leaders of the Palestinians, because Mr. Obama is getting some terrible advice. I don't know who is advising him. Maybe he's still skipping those briefings, and who knows where it's coming from. But somebody needs somebody, and I hope, Mr. Speaker, somebody close to the president will start advising him on the position of the Palestinians. They cannot make their position more clear. And when Prime Minister Netanyahu stood right here, the second level, and made the statement in essence that if Israel lays down its arms, there's no Israel. If the Palestinians lay down their arms, there'll be peace. They will not do so. And they continue to teach their children about how evil and horrible these Jews are, these Israelis are, that they need to be wiped off the map. They continue to name streets and holidays for those who would kill innocent Israeli children, innocent Israeli moms and dads as they sit having coffee. oh, they think that's wonderful. Let's make them heroes because they killed innocent Israelis. And yet this president continues to want to help the Palestinians have a big spot in Israel, a massive spot, which Israel's already seen, makes their nation indefensible, while the president seems not to be getting the message of their position. They want to wipe Israel off the map. Some quotes. This is from Yasser Arafat, the previous PLO leader. He said, "We plan to eliminate the state of Israel and establish a purely Palestinian state. We will make life unbearable for Jews by psychological warfare and population explosion. We Palestinians will take over everything, including all of Jerusalem." Now, the current Palestinian president has made clear, and his statement is, we cannot compromise on Jerusalem. They're taking all of Jerusalem. Also, this quote, that they would never recognize a Jewish state. The quote is, first of all, let me make something clear about the story of the Jewish state. He told Dream 2 TV on October 23rd, 2011. He's quoted, "They started talking to me about the Jewish state only 2 years ago, discussing it with me at every opportunity, every forum I went to, Jewish or non-Jewish, asking, what do you think about the Jewish state? And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I will never recognize the Jewishness of the state or a Jewish state." Another quote, Hamas kidnapped, or rather captured, a soldier and managed to keep him for 5 years, and that's a good thing. Another quote from President Abbas, "In a final resolution, we would not see the presence of a single Israeli, civilian or soldier, on our lands." And of course, their lands, they anticipate getting all of Israel. They intend to wipe the Israelis off the map. Whoever wants resistance, whoever wants jihad, the direction for jihad is well known and clear. This is Mahmoud al-Habash, the Palestinian Minister for Religious Affairs. He said, "Those who send young people to Syria or elsewhere to die for a misdirected cause must stop and understand that Jerusalem is still waiting. Jerusalem is the direction. Jerusalem is the address." Another quote, actually Hamas, a group designated by the State Department and European Union as a foreign terrorist organization, they, of course, are well respected in the area the Palestinians are occupying. And Saeb Erekat, the Palestinian diplomat's chief negotiator, said, "Hamas is a Palestinian movement, is not, will never be a terrorist organization." Well, we know the facts dictate otherwise. But we keep coming back to this point, Mr. Speaker. As long as the leaders of the Palestinians continued to say that terrorist organizations are peaceful in their view, even though they want to kill Israelis, wipe them off the map, and as long as they continue to say they will never recognize an Israeli state, a Jewish state, they will never allow them to exist, they will continue to push to wipe them off the map, how in the world can the President of the United States act like he is a friend to Israel and yet say we want to accommodate their getting a vote that will make Israel indispensable to people that want to destroy them? Here's some more quotes. Following are excerpts from an interview with Hamas MP and cleric Yunus al-Astal, which aired on Al-Aqsa TV on May 11th of 2011. He said the Jews are brought in droves to Palestine so that the Palestinians and the Islamic nation behind them will have the honor of annihilating the evil of this gang. All the predators, all the birds of prey, all the dangerous reptiles and insects, and all the lethal bacteria are far less dangerous than the Jews. And here's another. In just a few years, all the Zionists, the settlers, they'll all realize that their arrival in Palestine was for the purpose of the great massacre by means of which Allah wants to relieve humanity of their evil. Here's another from this Hamas member and cleric. When Palestine is liberated and its people return to it, and the entire region, with the grace of Allah, will have turned into the United States of Islam, the land of Palestine will become the capital of the Islamic Caliphate, and all these countries will turn into states within the Caliphate. Another great quote from these wonderful leaders. Another leader said, "I swear that if we had a nuke, we'd have used it this very morning." So those are the people that the President of the United States thinks are being extremely reasonable, and he considers that Netanyahu, in wanting to keep a country in which they can live without off the map, is being unreasonable. Netanyahu's made very clear they want peace, but how can they sit down with people who will not even acknowledge they have a right to exist? That's not a precondition. That is a condition for wiping them off the map as a threat to mankind if they're not willing to recognize that genocide is inappropriate. They are war criminal wannabes. And when people make clear that they're going to commit murder or genocide, how long do you have to wait before it's okay to stop them? Well, the president's made clear it may be time to move out of the way so that these Palestinians that want to obliterate Israel can have their will. I mean, one thought came back to mind back in my days as a felony judge. You know, when you have somebody who's driving a car and people say, "Hey, we just need a ride to this location. Once we get there, we're going to murder some people, but we don't need anything for you. We just need a ride." The person that drove that car, knowing that those people made those comments about wanting to kill people when they get to that location, they're also guilty of murder. So I'm not accusing anybody. I'm raising questions. So if the United States says, "Here, Palestinian terrorist groups, we want to provide you the vehicle to have a powerful place right in the middle, a huge section of Israel. We want to give you that place." And you've made clear, we know, you've made clear once you're there, you're going to wipe out Israel. Does that make the United States leaders that facilitate that, does that make them accessories? Just asking. Mr. Speaker, you can advise the parliamentarian. I'm not accusing anybody. I'm just asking the question. The president needs to be advised by somebody that people are threatening murder, genocide, and those are not the people whose side we should be on trying to accommodate to reach that goal. It's a difficult time, and it's a scary time. Many of us believe what Scripture says, "To whom much is given, of them much is required." I've mentioned a number of times the elderly West African gentleman who advised me when I was over there with Mercy Ship that, you know, we were so excited when you elected your first black president, but we've continued since then to see America get weaker. And you've got to go back to Washington and tell your friends there that when America gets weaker, we suffer. And then we see the stories that to whom much is given. This United States of America, that our leaders in this administration, according to articles, Catholic bishop in Nigeria, that this administration is saying, we're not going to help you stop Boko Haram, these radical Islamists. We're going to let them keep killing innocent Christians, kidnapping and sexually raping, abusing Christian girls. But if you will change your laws and accommodate same-sex marriage and pay for abortion, then we'll be willing to come help. I was advised by some other members of Congress back from a trip to East Africa, where they were told by leaders in East African nations the same thing, that they're being told by this people in this administration, oh yeah, we'll help you with radical Islam, but only if you change your laws to violate your strongly held Christian beliefs that same-sex marriage is wrong, and also start providing abortions, also violating your strongly held religious beliefs. Only if you will violate your Christian beliefs will we be willing to come help you. If there's a God, as the Bible talks about, there will be a price to this nation for acting in such a way. My dear friend, I think the world of him, a man named Sean Hannity. I don't usually get to see his program live. And again, last night, in the wee hours, I was watching a replay of Sean's program. And he was talking about, once again, a terrorist with ties to a mosque in the Boston area. And, of course, I know I had done some research on this, found research that had been done by others, and found an article by Ryan Morrow back from December 2013. But I know when I was questioning the director of the FBI, Director Mueller, before our Judiciary Committee, and I was incredulous that the Russians, of all people, could advise the United States twice that the older Tsarnaev had been radicalized long before he ever killed people and maimed people during the Boston Marathon. We've been twice. When we took no action the first time, then they advised the FBI that Tsarnaev, the older Tsarnaev, had been radicalized. You need to check into it. And the best I could find out is the FBI interviewed Tsarnaev, and he said he wasn't a terrorist. Imagine that. And they talked to his mother, and she said her son was not a terrorist. And I challenged him and said, in effect, you didn't even go to the Boston Mosque where Tsarnaev attended to find out, to investigate if he had been radicalized. And he challenged me. He said that wasn't true. And I said, what part wasn't true? And he said, we did go to the mosque there. And I didn't hear the little tag online he put after that until I heard a replay. My staff had to say, you apparently didn't hear what he said after he said we did go to the mosque. So I had to listen to the replay. What he said after he said we did go to the mosque in our outreach program. In the outreach program, we talked about that before. It took years before the FBI finally suspended their partnership with CARE after years before the FBI had found evidence that was utilized in the Holy Land Foundation trial, the largest terrorist prosecution case in American history. And CARE was named as an unindicted but a co-conspirator. And they tried to have their name removed from the pleadings, but the federal judge at the district level and the United States Court of Appeals both said there's plenty of evidence to support CARE being a co-conspirator supporting terrorism. So no, we're not going to strike their name from the pleadings. There were other names that were challenging as well. So I was surprised it took years for the FBI to decide to suspend their outreach program, their partnership with CARE. And yet, according to the Director Mueller, they continued that outreach program to that mosque. But I did challenge him with one final question, and I held up these documents here. The Articles of Incorporation or Articles of Organization. This is for a group, and this is with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that they got these Articles of Organization, and it is organizing a group called the Islamic Society of Boston, which established the mosque in Boston that Tsarnaev attended, that the latest terrorist attended. But my friend Sean Hannity was asking the question about this mosque because he was shocked, like I was previously, why has there not been more investigation? And this article pretty well tells the tale. From 2013, Clarion Project, Islamic Society of Boston. It says the Islamic Society of Boston's teachings are largely based on Islamists like Muslim Brotherhood spiritual leader Yusuf al-Qawadari and Saeed Qutb, the Brotherhood cleric who influenced Osama bin Laden, as reported in 2008 that the Muslim Brotherhood and the Pakistani Islamist group Jamaat-e-Islami are the prominent belief system. Popular websites used by the members and recommended by mosque leaders are mostly fundamentalist and rabidly homophobic. So, yeah, we already knew that. Osama bin Laden had said that the writings of Qutb, particularly the booklet Milestones, helped radicalize him. If our FBI training materials had not been purged, as have our intelligence training materials and other training materials, if they had not been purged of material that CARE found offensive, CARE being the entity that the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals and a U.S. District Court said there's plenty of evidence to support their being co-conspirators in terrorism, they found some language offensive, and so there were, well, they classified it. I thought it was ridiculous, so I won't say an approximate amount. They found many pages to be offensive to them, this co-conspirator in terrorism, according to the pleadings in the Holy Land Foundation trial. And so they were removed. So, as one intelligence officer told me, we blinded ourselves of the ability to see our enemy. So probably they don't even know in our FBI that they should go into the mosque and talk to people there. They should have asked, well, look, you know Tsarnaev, was he reading Qutb, Q-U-T-B, an Egyptian, well, they call him an Egyptian martyr, but he was a terrorist. He promoted terrorism, and he wrote this booklet that has helped radicalize people. But if you know what radicals believe, to ask the questions to get to the bottom, and so you're not just going to the mosque to sit down and pat each other on the back and have some food together. You're actually investigating whether somebody is going to kill people at the Boston Marathon in the future so you can save their lives. But they didn't know enough to do that because they're not properly trained anymore, because CARE gets offended when we try to properly train them. But this article goes on and says their writings and teachings were fanatical, and this is from Sheikh Ahmed Mansour in 2013. He said, and he's talking about there at the Islamic Society of Boston's teaching in the mosque, he said their writings and teachings were fanatical. I left and refused to go back to pray. I left Egypt to escape the Muslim Brotherhood, but I had found it there. The Muslim Brotherhood advises this administration, and for the incompetent people that say, well, Gohmert never gives names, he just says they advise the president. They don't know how many times I've given names. Heck, Muhammad Ali Biari from Plano was on the top advisory group for the Homeland Security. Imam Majid, the president of the Al-Dulles Area Muslim Society, Adams, I'm sure John Adams would appreciate that, but he was president of that. He was part of a group that was co-conspirator in the, named as a co-conspirator in the terrorist prosecution trial of the Holy Land Foundation. He advised the president regularly. He gave him advice according to the media, and he gave advice to the president about his speech back in 2011, where the president inaccurately said everybody agreed on back to the pre-67 boundaries. No, they didn't. If you're Imam Majid and you're part of what was named as a co-conspirator in terrorism, maybe you think that, but certainly the parties didn't agree to that. Anyway, this article goes on. In 2004, the Islamic Society of Boston website had a section titled 40 Recommendations for the Muslim Home. It said to, quote, hang up the whip where the members of the household can see it, unquote, and that children are to be hit if they refuse to pray once they are 10 years old. The section also said regarding wife beating, quote, hitting is not the way to discipline. It is not to be resorted to except when all other means are exhausted or when it is needed to force someone to do obligatory acts of obedience, unquote, which apparently include of a sexual nature. The article says one of the founders of the Islamic Society of Boston is Abdurrahman Alamoudi, who was its first president. And Alamoudi, I asked, insert here, I asked Director Mueller, were you aware that Alamoudi is the one that started these mosques that Tsarnaev attended? And he said, no, he was not. But he sure knew who Alamoudi was, because the FBI gathered the evidence, whether they wanted to or not, that put him in prison. Actually, I think the British gathered evidence that was so overwhelming that there wasn't much choice. He had to be prosecuted. Yes, he had helped the Clinton administration, been some help to the Bush administration, according to Alamoudi. And anyway, he gets arrested out at Dulles Airport and is doing, I believe, 23 years in prison for supporting terrorism. But the article points out he was convicted of terrorism-related charges in 2004 and has admitted to being a secret Muslim Brotherhood operative. He wrote from his prison cell, quote, I am, I hope, still a member of the Muslim Brotherhood organization in the USA, unquote. He was last paid a speaking fee by the Islamic Society of Boston in 2000. The same year, he publicly expressed his support for Hamas and Hezbollah. The Muslim Brotherhood spiritual leader, Yusuf al-Qawadari, has been on the ISB Board of Trustees. Tax filings from 1998 to 2000 include his name under a list of officers, directors, trustees, and key employees. In 2002, Qawadari helped ISB, or the Islamic Society of Boston, fundraise via videotape because the U.S. would not grant him entry. His name also appeared on the Islamic Society of Boston's website until March of 2001. The Islamic Society of Boston originally denied having any connection to Qawadari and later claimed that the inclusion of his name on the tax forms was an error. The ISB hosted Islamic speakers like Salah Sultan and Yasir Qadi. In March of 2010, Imam Abdullah Farouk said that Afia Siddiqui, a young woman arrested for al-Qaeda ties, was innocent and, quote, you must grab onto this rope, grab onto the typewriter, grab onto the shovel, grab onto the gun and the sword. Don't be afraid to step out into this world and do your job, unquote. ISB, Islamic Society of Boston, donated thousands of dollars to the Holy Land Foundation, a U.S. Muslim Brotherhood entity later shut down for financing Hamas. It also donated to the Benevolence International Foundation, later identified as Al-Qaeda Front. Imam Sheikh Basnui Nahila has served the Islamic Society of Boston for at least 10 years. is also a board member of the Boston chapter of the Muslim American Society. Anyway, in 1994, Hamas fundraiser Mohammed El-Mazan addressed the Muslim Arab Youth Association. He spoke after an individual was introduced as a leader of the Hamas military wing. An FBI report documented the speaker saying, quote, "I've been told to restrict or restrain what I say. I hope no one is recording me or taking any pictures, as none are allowed, because I'm going to speak the truth to you. It's simple. Finish off the Israelis, kill them all, exterminate them, no peace ever." These are the Muslim brothers that the president gets advice from. This organization, it's time to stop. It's time to listen to our friends in Israel and do not, at all costs, facilitate the destruction or the attempted destruction of Israel by our enemies and their enemies. With that, I yield back.